1934. That was from a German film called Triumph of the Will. The whole thing lasts for about 2 hours and shows the German dictator Adolf Hitler and the other Nazi bosses at a great political rally held at Nuremberg. At these rallies, Hitler was treated as if he were a god, and that was how he intended it to be. Everything was specially staged to impress the tens of thousands of German people who yelled and stamped and saluted and cheered. It was an occasion for great outbursts of mass emotion, maybe a bit like some exciting cup final at Wembley, except that this was something much more sinister. Hitler and the leading Nazis were probably amongst the most evil men the world has ever known. This special film was made of the 1934 Nuremberg rally, so that Germans who couldn't get there and people in other countries could see the great leader, the Superman who was making Germany great. It was a tremendous propaganda exercise, and it was very successful. A sequence you've just seen showed Hitler's arrival at Nuremberg, flying in like some god from the skies to the accompaniment of noble music and breathtaking shots of the sky and the city beneath. The director and editor using all their skill to make the scene as impressive as possible. Later, Hitler is seen driving through the streets of Nuremberg. Notice again the clever placing of the cameras to produce impressive shots of Hitler. Notice how it's suggested that he's a kind as well as powerful man. The little child who brings him flowers looks at least as if she loves him. And there's a cat, you'll see, apparently sitting on a window ledge under a German flag as the procession passes by. Immediately following this shot, you'll see Hitler looking upwards to his right, smiling as if he were smiling at the animal. Actually, he never even saw the cat, which was shot on another day, as if from Hitler's motor car. And if you look really carefully, in one of the shots of the roadway taken from above, you may see cameramen driving alongside Hitler's car, getting thousands of feet of film of him so that the filmmaker could select the best, the most flattering shots. See the cat? See the cameramen? That's one kind of propaganda that can be created by filmmakers. What would you have thought about Hitler if you'd seen that film in 1934, do you think? That he was a great and good man with millions of happy Germans loving him and respecting him? That was the idea anyway, and at the time, it worked. Later, of course, Hitler and his Nazi party were responsible for the deaths of millions of people, many millions slaughtered like cattle in the German concentration camps. Triumph of the Will and other films like it were all part of the image-building process, the propaganda machine, which any political party needs if it's going to persuade people that it's the right party. Nazi propaganda was nastier than most because the Nazi ideas were pretty foul. But don't let yourself be kidded. There's still plenty of totally dishonest political propaganda about today, on all sides. One of the ideas behind these programs is to help you to recognize when you might be being conned by political leaders and by other people. Now, as they say, for something completely different. Here's a long sequence from quite a different kind of film. Still propaganda, but not political propaganda. Maybe it's more honest. You can decide for yourselves. It's from a film called Breaking Point, part of a television series called Facts for Life, programs for people like you to see at school, about various health topics from food poisoning to contraception. Breaking Point is about broken bones. Particularly, it's about how your bones and other parts of your body can be damaged in road accidents if you're not wearing a seatbelt. Here's the whole seatbelt sequence, followed by a short section about motorbikes. You'll see a surgeon talking and a road accident victim, and you'll see demonstrations on a test rig and some badly mutilated bodies. So close your eyes if it gets too tough for you. But try to watch for two things in particular. When the man in the hospital bed's asked if he was wearing a seatbelt when he got hurt, and how can you be sure that the question and answer haven't been tinkered around with, as we showed in last time's program? And when we see the horrific accident towards the end, well, do we see a real accident or don't we? Watch.
Her leg was broken by a motor car, and it's road accidents which cause very many of the bone injuries, some slight, some serious, which fill the hospitals.
Well, I spun the wheel out to miss hitting her in the back of the car, and there was a Volkswagen approaching on the other side, and he just ran me full tilt. Knocked me right across the road. The gear lever smashed my kneecap into 3 pieces, and I had the hip dislocated, a cracked rib, and damaged chest.
Were you wearing a seatbelt?
No, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Oh, well, this is a very common pattern that we see. If they're not belted in and they have a relatively low velocity accident, they're thrown forward, their knees strike the dashboard, their chest strikes the steering wheel, and their head often goes through the windscreen, producing a combination of injuries that's only too familiar. And all these would have been either completely prevented or minimized had the belts been in use.
This man's going to hit something, but he's safely belted in. He's on a special test rig which suddenly stops him when he's traveling at exactly 30 miles an hour. Did you see how the impact made the whole heavy test rig jump into the air? That gives you some idea of the force of the impact. Watch it again. Now watch it in slow motion and see how well the seatbelt restrains him. He comes to no harm. Again, in slow motion. The surgeon shows what happens when people don't wear seatbelts.
Well, here we have a typical driver and his girlfriend sitting in a car. He's not wearing a seatbelt. And supposing that this car, doing 30 miles an hour, is in violent collision with another vehicle or with a fixed object such as a wall or a tree. Now, this man, he's not restrained in any way by a belt. So if the car stops suddenly, he's going to be thrown forward. And the things that will happen are that as he goes forward, his chest will strike the steering wheel and likely produce a fracture of the sternum, the breastbone, or the ribs, because this will hit the wheel. His head will then be thrown forward into the windscreen and shatter the windscreen, producing a head injury and probably severe lacerations with the broken glass. I now want to illustrate what happens when the person sitting in the passenger seat is involved in an accident. This is a more dangerous seat, of course, than the driver's seat because although the steering wheel can produce injuries to the chest, of course, there's nothing to restrain the forward movement of the body here. And if the car is in a collision and stops suddenly, then the person here is going to be thrown forward. And the person I would mention, of course, that the person in the seat's often the girlfriend of the driver or a female person, and is at a greater risk than the driver, because the body goes forward, and the first thing to strike usually is the head against the windscreen, and this breaks the windscreen. The head and face are usually badly cut. If the force continues to act, the person may actually be thrown clear out at the front of the car, through the windscreen, and of course finish on the road.
Let's watch that happen on the test rig. He's not belted in this time. See him pitch forward? He weighs 13 stone. If he weighed less, he'd be shot right off the end of the rig. That was slow motion. You can see how it hit the windscreen if you were in a real car. The lower part of your body can also be injured through not wearing a seatbelt.
In the lower part of the body, the knees will come into contact with the fascia board, producing often a fracture of the kneecap.
This man broke his kneecap. It's in plaster. There it is after it had happened. His thigh bone, the two bones of his lower leg, and there's the smashed kneecap. This is what broken knees look like just after an accident. This woman smashed both against the parcel shelf.
If the force continues to act violently, then of course the knee striking here with the knee and hip being in the flex position, there's a grave danger that he will also get a dislocation, a posterior dislocation of his hip joint on one or other side.
The same patient again. As well as a broken kneecap, his left hip joint was dislocated. On the X-ray, there's his pelvis, and his right hip joint's all right, but the left one's been pushed right out of joint. The top of the thigh bone's here, when it should have been down here. The force of the impact pushed it up. Things like this are even more likely to happen to a front seat passenger who's not strapped in. Driver and passenger must wear seatbelts, and head restraints as well if they can, to prevent neck injuries, which are very common in accidents. Always wear your seatbelt. You know, it's one thing just to hear about injuries, but take a look at what actually happened to just one driver who got into a 35 miles an hour collision when he wasn't using his seatbelt. He died at the roadside. If four-wheel vehicles are dangerous, motorbikes are even worse.
Motorcycles are very dangerous because people riding them are not surrounded by the superstructure of a motor car, and of course it's the rider that gets the impact and not the machine.
This motorcyclist came off at 40 miles an hour and hit the curb. He had a broken leg as well. The side of his chest was torn open when his motorbike hit a lorry. His eyes were seriously damaged at the same time. He went over his handlebars, face down onto a road. He also broke an arm and a leg.
Well, the man wasn't wearing a seatbelt because he said he wasn't. He was asked, were you wearing a seatbelt? And he answered, no, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So there can be no faking then. Did you spot it? Then the accident. No, it wasn't all real. You saw first the guy coming down the test rig towards the camera. Then a fraction of a second of a shot of a bottle of blood smashing on the pavement. Then a second or so of a police photograph of a mock-up of a road accident filmed through a red filter. Then a few seconds of a coloured photograph of the same mocked-up accident. Then a real photograph of a man really killed through not wearing his seatbelt. A lot of fake. But did it work? Might it make people think more about the need to wear seatbelts? What do you think? We'll end with 2 short propaganda films you may have seen on television. They were all made by the government, but they're not political. Like Breaking Point, they're intended to alert people to danger they should do something about. The first one's about seatbelts again, but a very different approach from the film that you've just seen.
My first invention, the seatbelt. The strap should not be twisted. The lap strap should lie across the hip bones and never across the stomach. Buckle well down by the side. The seatbelt should be worn tightly, but comfortably. I think there's a future in these, you know.
More effective? Not so effective. What do you think? What do you think about using television for this sort of propaganda? Have people the right to do it? Should television be used to try to persuade people? And if so, persuade them to do what kind of things? Finally, a slightly longer government-produced piece. Like the last one, a long way from the kind of political propaganda we started this programme with. This is a horrifying example of what can be done by the imaginative use of sound effects. All you see is a burnt-out house. But you hear? Well, what do you hear? Many people found this little film too much for them. They complained that it was too horrific. Is it? And anyway, can propaganda be too effective or horrific if it aims at saving life? As before, lots of questions. It's up to you to provide your own answers.
Nancy? Jimmy?
Please keep matches away from children.